Hello, everyone. I'm Lucas, and welcome back to another chilling true crime story. Today, we're going to dive into the mysterious case of Emma Hartley. On the surface, Emma's life seemed perfect: an ideal marriage, a successful career, and a life many would envy. She had met her husband, Luke, in college, and their whirlwind romance quickly turned into a storybook marriage. They lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs, and everything about their life screamed happiness. But as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. Emma and Luke were the kind of couple that everyone admired. They had the perfect social media presence, often posting pictures from vacations, family gatherings, and quiet moments at home. But underneath this facade, there were cracks forming in their relationship. Emma's friends had noticed that things weren't always as they seemed, but they never imagined what would happen next. It started small. Luke's moods became unpredictable, his temper flaring over insignificant issues. He began to withdraw from Emma, spending more time at work and less time with her. Emma, ever the optimist, brushed it off as stress from his job. But as time went on, the tension between them grew, and Emma's friends couldn't ignore it any longer. At first, Emma refused to acknowledge the problems in her marriage. She would laugh it off and make excuses for Luke's behavior. But those closest to her, her best friend, Sarah, and her sister, Jessica, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. They saw the signs of emotional abuse, the subtle ways Luke tried to control Emma, even if she didn't realize it. He would monitor her phone, accuse her of being too friendly with her colleagues, and criticize her every move. Luke's past remained a mystery to Emma. He had always seemed like the perfect guy, the charming, loving husband, but as Emma's friends began to dig, they uncovered things that made them question everything they knew about him. His former relationships were far from perfect. He had a history of controlling behavior, and his ex-girlfriends had made disturbing claims about his temper. Then, one fateful morning, Emma vanished. It was completely out of the blue. Her family, friends, and co-workers were left stunned and confused. Her phone was found in her car, but there was no sign of her. No note, no sign of a struggle, just nothing. Her friends started to panic, and the authorities were called. Luke, when questioned, seemed shockingly composed, too calm for someone whose wife had just disappeared. His story was vague. He claimed he had no idea where Emma had gone, that she had simply taken off without warning. But his lack of emotion raised eyebrows. Shouldn't he be more worried? After all, they had been married for several years, and surely he cared for her. The police investigation was slow. There were no signs of foul play, no witnesses, and no concrete evidence to suggest anything other than that Emma had left on her own accord. As time went on, people began to wonder if she had just run away. Her friends and family refused to believe that. They knew Emma. She would never leave without telling anyone, especially her mother, who she had been extremely close to. Her family began to question Luke's behavior even more. Why wasn't he showing more urgency? Why wasn't he cooperating with the investigation? His calmness began to seem less like concern and more like a mask for something darker. As the weeks passed, the case seemed to be going nowhere. But Emma's family didn't give up hope. They kept searching, they kept questioning, and they kept pushing for answers. Weeks later, Emma's body was discovered in a remote, abandoned area about 20 miles from their home. It was a place she would never have gone on her own. Her body was partially covered in branches, as though someone had tried to hide it. The medical examiner's report confirmed the worst. Emma had been strangled, and it was clear she had been left to die alone. This was no accidental disappearance. It was a murder. At this point, Luke became the primary suspect. Despite his calm exterior, the investigation quickly turned toward him. He had been the last person to see Emma, and his behavior during the entire investigation had been, at best, odd. His alibi was shaky at best, and his past became a focus of attention. As detectives dug into Luke's history, they uncovered a shocking truth. He had been previously involved in a series of violent altercations with ex-partners. This was a man with a dark side, one that Emma had never known about. Could it be that the man she had married wasn't who she thought he was? The more the investigation revealed, the more it seemed as though Emma had been trapped in a dangerous marriage with a man who was willing to kill her. Emma's family and friends, devastated by the discovery of her body, began to share their experiences with investigators. They told police about the warning signs they had noticed over the years. Luke had been controlling and manipulative, but Emma had kept those struggles to herself, always trying to protect her husband's image. But now they saw it clearly. Luke wasn't the man they had believed him to be. Sarah, Emma's best friend, revealed that Emma had come to her just months before her disappearance. She confided in Sarah that she was considering leaving Luke. He had become more possessive, and Emma was fearful of his reaction if she ever tried to leave. Emma's sister, Jessica, had also noticed the changes in Luke. He had started to isolate Emma from her friends and family, slowly making her believe that they were the ones who didn't care about her. He had even taken control of their finances, making it difficult for Emma to leave him should she ever try. But the final nail in the coffin came when Emma's friends discovered something shocking. Emma had found out about Luke's infidelity. He had been seeing another woman behind her back, and Emma had known about it. It wasn't just that he had been unfaithful, it was the fact that he had kept this secret from her for months, and the emotional toll it had taken on Emma was immeasurable. As the investigation continued, disturbing details about Luke's past emerged. He had been previously accused of abusive behavior by ex-girlfriends. One of them even claimed that Luke had once threatened her life during an argument. Despite these claims, he had managed to avoid serious repercussions. Luke's pattern of abuse seemed to follow him into his marriage with Emma. Emma's friends revealed that Luke had used tactics of emotional manipulation to make her feel worthless and dependent on him. He had isolated her from her friends, making her believe she was nothing without him. The authorities quickly focused their attention on Luke, but they didn't have enough evidence to charge him yet. They had to find a way to connect him directly to Emma's death. The trial of Luke Hartley was a highly publicized event, with news outlets covering every detail of the case. The prosecution presented a damning case against Luke, detailing his history of abuse, his suspicious behavior, and his possible motive for Emma's murder. They argued that Luke killed Emma because she had found out about his infidelity and was planning to leave him, something he couldn't tolerate. Luke's defense team, however, painted him as a man who had been under extreme stress due to his troubled marriage. They argued that Emma had been the one to push him to the breaking point, and that he had never intended to hurt her. According to the defense, her death was the result of a tragic, impulsive act that happened during an argument that got out of control. The trial was filled with emotional testimony from both sides. Emma's family and friends spoke of her strength, her dreams, and the life she should have had. Luke, on the other hand, sat stoically through the proceedings, refusing to show any emotion. As the trial progressed, the tension mounted. Would justice prevail for Emma? Or would Luke be able to convince the jury of his innocence? As the trial neared its conclusion, something unexpected happened. Luke took the stand. For the first time, he admitted to killing Emma. His confession sent shockwaves through the courtroom. But the confession came with a twist. Luke claimed that he had killed Emma in self-defense. According to his story, Emma had become aggressive during an argument, and in the heat of the moment, he had acted out of fear for his own life. He said that Emma had threatened to ruin him, to expose his secrets, and that he had been backed into a corner. The jury, however, was not convinced. Luke's story was filled with inconsistencies. Why had he hidden Emma's body? Why had he waited so long to confess? The jury deliberated for hours, and when the verdict was finally read, the courtroom held its breath. Luke was found guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, and although the verdict brought some measure of justice to Emma's family, it did little to heal the deep wounds caused by her death. In the aftermath, Emma's family and friends struggled to rebuild their lives. The emotional toll of losing Emma was something they would never fully recover from. But as time passed, they found strength in the fact that Luke would never hurt anyone again. They also found solace in the memories of the real Emma, the woman who had been full of life, who had been taken far too soon. As for Luke, he would spend the rest of his life in prison, reflecting on the choice he had made that fateful day. But for Emma's loved ones, the memory of her would live on, and they would continue to fight for justice no matter how long it took.